So, I mentioned in my previous video for Jack and Lily that in this video I was going to discuss the interview that the mother of these children did and do a statement and body language analysis of that. However, I'm going to postpone that video because I feel that I'd like to address the conversation that's going on with regards to the backyard of the house where these children come from. Now, I'll come back to that in a moment. Before I get onto that, I do want to discuss something that to me is a little bit concerning, and that is that I'm noticing some major grifters coming out of the woodwork and starting to cover this case. Now, I'm not going to name up channels that have a history of grifting. I know I did a video yesterday discussing Joseph Morris, but he's in a whole other category of his own. If you've watched my video, you will know what I'm talking about. This guy is morally reprehensible. I do recommend, if you've not watched my video yesterday, that it's probably worth your while watching it if you are considering watching content that is put out by Joseph Morris. I think you will thank me for it. Now, with regards to the other channels that are popping up, I've noticed a handful of channels that I've not heard of, I've never watched, and I don't know anything about. So I'm not going to comment on those. I've learnt one lesson. I've learned a few, but one important lesson I've learnt since beginning my channel is that it is very important to be cautious about recommending other channels based on one video. I got caught out that way with the Kylie Rodney case. Shortly after I began my channel, another channel popped up and I watched one of her videos and thought, yeah, actually she's made some good points here. So I created a post on my channel, and because there was a bit of a community with the Kylie Rodney case and there were some much larger channels who were kind of backing me because I had been connected with their channels before I began putting my own content out. So this creator was given a lot of promotion from several channels. Unfortunately, she turned out to be something of a rather kooky individual who was putting videos out in the end along the lines of looking at a photo of Kylie Rodney and deciding that in that photo of Kylie Rodney there was a baby in Kylie's bun, as in the bun in her hair on the top of her head. So I tend not to recommend channels that I don't know, because you never know, they may start off good and then deteriorate. As for other channels, I could, but I won't, name at least 3 channels who were actually connected with the Kylie Rodney case. 2 of them were also connected with other cases prior to that. Summer Wells, I think possibly going back one of them started on Summer Wells. I think the other one may have started around Gabby Petito, I'm not sure. One of those channels is pretty good, but he doesn't concern himself too much with regards to putting out content that is 100% verified. If it's going to get views, he'll put it out anyway. I also noticed audio on his channel that he had actually lifted from Plunder True Crime and had removed most of the audio watermarks, but he missed a few, which kind of gave away the fact that even though Plunder True Crime pays for premium in terms of radio dispatches, this creator decided that he'd just get it for free from her channel. There's another creator who, like him, will look for the somewhat clickbaity things to share on her channel, regardless of whether or not they are truthful. She will go hunting for anything that she can put out that's going to get clicks. There's also a content creator starting on this case who currently has a lawsuit against her for harassing families in another case and for breach of a court order preventing her from going anywhere near the families involved with that case. And then there's the channel which popped up during the Kylie Rodney case and created her own content. What do I mean by that? Fake witnesses. People who supposedly contacted her with exclusive information that only she had on her channel. So, like I said, I'm not going to name those channels. Maybe they've lifted their game and they're certainly not in the same class as Joseph Morris. But I just want to caution people with regards to being selective about which channels you go to for your content. To be honest, I, at this point in time, would recommend Plunder True Crime. There are 2 other larger creators who are quite well known, who for the most part do the right thing, but for reasons that I'm not going to share, I'm not going to recommend those channels. I'm not saying they're not worth following, I'm just saying I choose not to recommend them. I will also mention that in terms of my channel, I will never put out any content that I haven't personally verified. So you may find that there are things that I'm not covering with regards to this case, that other people are talking about. And the reason for that will be that I don't deal in rumours. I don't deal in anonymous tips. I don't deal in people claiming on social media to be a particular individual when it's really easy to fake accounts. So I will always verify everything that I put on my channel. So with all that out of the way, let's move on and start talking about this fence. Now, while I am extremely cautious of anything I see on there, I tend to only go with photos and newspaper articles. I do follow one of the Facebook groups for this case. And a few days ago, someone posted a bunch of photos showing the backyard and the back of this house. With these photos, they pointed out that actually the entire backyard was fenced off. So the story of the children getting out through the sliding door and vanishing into the woods didn't ring true. And I've seen a number of content creators reporting this on their channels. But I've been having a closer look at these photos showing the backyard. And I'm going to point out a number of things to you. So I've got the photos in order, and I'm just going to discuss things as we go along. First of all, you can see that is the sliding door there that they are referring to, and it does go directly out into the backyard. Now I have to say, I look at this backyard and I find myself wondering if maybe there was some sort of accident in this backyard prior to the Friday morning that these kids went missing, and that time has been spent basically covering up for that accident before the children were reported missing. Now I'm going to point out a few things here. So as you can see, the backyard is a dump. I think this shows us what sort of environment these children were living in, and it certainly brings to mind the Summer Wells case. Now, as for this inescapable backyard, let's have a look at the house for starters. The underneath of the house is blocked off, but it's blocked off with essentially canvas and tarpaulins. This is not something secure that is going to prevent adventurous children from getting under there. I can't see underneath the 2 lots of steps, but I can see that children could get under those steps. So unless it is also blocked off underneath the steps, that could also be an additional way for those children to get under the house. Having got under the house, is it possible that they could then get out the front of the house? We'll have a look at that in a little while when we get on to another photo. Now on the right hand side, you can see a fence, and it's hard to tell how secure that fence is, because basically that entire fence line is covered with that sort of traffic mesh that is basically really flimsy and could easily be lifted by a child who could then crawl under. Like I said, it's hard to see behind that mesh to see what the fence looks like behind. So I don't think we can rule that out in terms of a place for the children to get out of that yard. Now I'm going to zoom out for a minute just to give a bit more perspective. I'm sure most people have seen all these photos anyway, but I think it's worth discussing and actually worth really looking at it as opposed to just going, here's a picture that proves that the backyard was impenetrable. So that fence that I pointed out on the right-hand side, that was just a kind of a flimsy mesh, you can see that goes through to some pretty rough looking ground around the side of the house. And it appears that from there are a few options. The children could go straight down the hill towards the road. Certainly the rest of the property is not fenced off. The entrance to the property is not fenced off. So if it were possible for the children to get down the side of that house after getting through that flimsy mesh stuff, then there's pretty much nothing stopping them from getting straight down to the road. As for going up towards the woods behind the house from there, I can't really tell looking in this photo, because looking straight down, it does look like there is quite dense trees. There is a lot of dead wood on the ground around there. But without seeing closer in, you wouldn't know how easy it would be for the kids to get out that way. Okay, looking at it again from another angle, you can see that on the other side of that flimsy fence, there is nothing blocking the underside of that house, meaning that where that bit of tarpaulin or whatever it was down, it actually would have been quite easy for a child to get in through there and to come out on the other side of that fence where the house wasn't blocked off. So in actual fact, they wouldn't even need to try and climb under that fence or push it down. These are little kids. Maybe they couldn't climb over the fence, but kids are good at crawling and getting into small spaces. So to get under that house and come out further along where there's no obstacles, certainly not too much of a challenge for little kids, even a 4-year-old, because as you can see, these are country kids, meaning that they probably spent a lot of time outdoors, so they probably were capable of doing things like this. These hardly seem like the kind of kids that would have sat inside playing on their iPads all day. Now, let's move on to another slide. Okay, there's a few things that we can see in this one. First of all, yes, the underside of the house at the front appears to be blocked off in a similar fashion to the rear of the house, meaning in a not so impenetrable fashion. But you can also see here that from the back of the house, where it's not blocked off, if they were to go into that little area, the other side of the fence. There is nothing to stop them from going there, straight down to the front of the house, or heading straight uphill into the woods. So that is already one exit that is available for those children. If you look at the very back fence line, they've got more of that orange flimsy stuff, and you can see it's not overly secure because it's sagging. A 4-year-old probably wouldn't be able to climb over that, but we don't know how well secured it is at the bottom. If it's just been run straight across, then it's quite possible that the children could have just lifted that and gone out. Now I am going to zoom in on the right hand side because this is what I think is crucial to look at. Now I'm yet to verify it independently, but it has been suggested that there are family members living in that old RV out the back there. And you can see there's a gate. It's a closed off yard and there's a gate that goes through to that RV in the middle of the front fence line. Now I'm going to work backwards because if you look at the corner of that fence line where it butts up alongside the backyard of that house, there actually appears to be a gap between the corner of the fence for the RV and the fence for the house. And I'll show you that again in another image. And I was looking at this and it made me question, because you've got this cubby house here, and in this photo you can't see behind the cubby house to see if it's blocked off. But you can see a clear path going through the grass that goes back past the cubby house and beyond it. It appears to me that that track going up past the cubby house and beyond it, like behind it, actually may be the path for going through to that RV. And if, as is suggested, the individuals living in that RV happen to be the step-grandmother and step-uncle of those children, then there is, of course, a good chance those children would have been occasionally visiting, or would at least know how to access that location. But the question is it blocked off? So let's have a look from a different angle. Okay, I will zoom in on this one shortly as well, but I just wanted to show you that from that side fence, were it possible for the children to exit the property at that location, they could head straight down the driveway. You've seen the driveway just goes straight down to the road. There is nothing there that would prevent them, after they'd gotten out of the yard, from heading down towards the road, or even heading off to the right there and once again heading off into the woods. Now I did want to point something out first before I look at the top end of that fence, because I think this is important too. Now, it's been double fenced along the driveway. You can see there's an internal fence and there's an external fence. The internal fence appears to go straight up to the house, but the external fence, you can see a gap between the external fence and the end of the house. These children are 4 and 6. That gap, I believe, would easily be wide enough for 2 very small children to squeeze through and then head off on an adventure. The question is, can they get to that outer fence, or is the internal fence preventing that? Okay, so this time I've done a side by side. The image on the right is from that zoomed out aerial shot. And I want to discuss that first. You can see that there is a definite gap between that shed and the cubby house. Now, in that zoomed out photo, you can see that the path that goes from the back of the house goes straight up between the cubby house and the shed out to the external entrance, or the between the 2 fences. It's not easy to tell in that zoomed out photo where the fence is on there. So we need to go and have a look at the photo on the left hand side there, the clearer zoomed in one. And this is the reason why I've put both photos there, because you can see that that internal fence ends level with the cubby house. You've got this path that goes down behind the cubby house, basically to an opening in the fence. And you can see on the right hand side, there's no gate on the external fence. The bottom there is the corner of the yard with the van in it, and there's a gap. There should be a gate there, presumably, that hasn't been built, but there is no gate. So basically, people have been jumping on the bandwagon of the kids couldn't possibly have gotten out of the backyard, but I've just identified 2, possibly 3 locations where they could have actually gotten out of the backyard. And since the rest of the property's not fenced, as soon as they're out of that yard, then they have the option of heading down the driveway towards the road or heading up the hill into the woods. Now, do I think that happened? To be quite honest, no. I don't believe this story that the parents are giving at all, because there are so many red flags with both of them. I know people are now saying, well, the father's helping with the search and he's going to do a polygraph, all this stuff that shows that the father's innocent, and some anonymous poster on Facebook has said that they went to school with him and he's a lovely bloke. Well, yeah, none of that really proves anything, in my opinion. And I'll discuss that when I get to the point of looking at his interview. So my next video on this will be looking at the interview with the mother, and then I will follow up with an analysis of the various clips we have from the stepfather And in that video, I will also address things that have been said by the stepfather and also claims that have been made on Facebook with regards to him. So, on that note, it is a somewhat shorter video than my usual ones, but I thought it was important to address this before it became one of those things that became accepted as solid fact. No, it is not true that the yard was fully enclosed. And while I know there are people out there who are all gung-ho and want to find whatever evidence they can that the parents are lying, we need to basically deal in fact. Yes, if the children were able to let themselves out through that sliding door, then that is definitely negligent of the parents to not do something about that before it occurred. Likewise, it is also negligent if those children were able to get out through the sliding door for the parents to basically not make sure that the yard was fully enclosed in a way that was secure enough to prevent two children from just wandering out. So there's definitely issues here. Even if their story is true about the children opening the sliding door and letting themselves out, then there is some serious negligence here. So on that note, I'm going to end the video here. Thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please do subscribe. And of course, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.